Hey, stop horsing around over here.
All right.
You're getting too loud. Go outside. Oh, is this? I think this microphone might be finally active. Yeah, that's weird. Sorry about that. I don't know what's happening other than that. I think maybe OBS doesn't know how to refer to these two microphones separately, even though they have different names and they're plugged into two different USB ports. I really didn't expect that to be an issue, but it, I guess, is. Let me. I mean, you saw me playing the Barbie game. I guess that was the major point of that anyway. I was talking while I was playing it, but that wasn't very significant. But I think, can you hear me now? It looks like you can. It looks like the thing's going up and down the way it normally is when I'm talking. So, okay, cool. Let me just try and experiment, and hopefully I can see the difference. I'm going to try to switch. I'm going to try to switch to. I just unplugged the camera, the bird cam, but let me try to plug the bird cam back in and see if it takes over the microphone again. It shouldn't, but let's see what happens. Well, yeah, that didn't. It happened again, I think, right? I don't know. It's pretty frustrating to me actually because it's coming in through USB, I think, and maybe OBS doesn't know how to sort out all the different things coming off across USB. I think I just need to spend a little more time with it and see if I can debug this. Isn't software great? Okay, so let's just let me just kill that out. Anyway, hope you had a good lunch or had some lunch or whatever you did. For this last little bit here, what I'd like to do is, and I think you can hear me again now, so I'm going to keep going, but the thing I'd like to do is take a look at Passage. I asked you to take a look at and play Passage. So Colin, that's exactly what I did. I have a separate scene for the bird cam, and I have camera 2, which is the bird cam, only on that scene, and yet it took over the audio on my other scene. That's why I was surprised. So anyway, I want to take a look at Passage in some detail and also Queers in Love at the End of the Universe because these are two games that give us different ways to think about gender. And what I'm doing right now is essentially going to be a kind of close reading or close playing of these games. And this might be a model that you could emulate in your own close playing assignment, which is your project this week. But it also will hopefully introduce some of the kinds of questions you could reflect on in your gaming journals. I was trying to set this bird came up over lunch, so I haven't had time to write out the prompts, but I'll do that after I wrap up here. But let me, I'll talk through it as I go through it. Just take a look at Passage. So I'm going to switch to a scene where I don't actually have your Discord stuff in view, so if you do have a question, you can go ahead and answer it, but I might not see it. But I wanted to take a look first at Passage and see how that, well, I saw some of your comments on it, and I think your comments were good. I mean, they're typical, like noting instances of sadness or different feelings like that. I'm going to try to just play it here. Hopefully I did test this, so hopefully this works. Should just pop up. There it goes. Cool. So this is passage. I believe I'll turn on the audio, but no, I don't trust audio right now, so I'm going to leave audio alone, and I'm going to simply play passage for a moment or two. As you see, it's very constrained. It doesn't have a big window like you might expect a video game to typically have. If you move the arrow keys back and forth, you do seem to control this character here with blonde hair, blue eyes, pixel sprite, and you can move around the map up and down. Some people don't realize you can move up and down, but you can. You can go pretty far down. So if we're doing a close reading, I like to sort of start listing attributes. So if we think of, like, in close reading, you have, in a literary sense, you have a book, you have words in that book, and you can make a list of those and make a list of the letters. Like, you could identify each of the individual components that are available to be read. So as I play passage on the stream here, if you could in Discord just take notes or just record or write the things that you notice that are interpretable, the things that can be interpreted, right? So I've already mentioned one, which is the shape of the screen. So we've got a constrained ribbon going along like this as opposed to a full field of view. And I can move up and down. That's another thing. So movement is another thing that can be read. We've got imagery in the background. Something happened there. I got a star. And my number went up. 106, 107, 108, 109, 110. And where did they go? There. And now something has happened. There's a heart. The two characters now move together as I move the arrow keys up and down. The landscape is changing, so I have a different image, and also the pixels have changed. The colors have become more muted, the hair has become browner. Also, and this is kind of subtle, but the position in the screen is different. So in the first part of the game, my character, the character I'm moving, appeared more or less right here, and now he's way over here, about halfway. And as you can see, even if I'm not touching the keyboard at all, they gradually shift over to the right. There's some bricks. The music hasn't changed. It's kind of a constant pixel tune or chip tune kind of sound. You might call it melancholy. There's a minor chord arpeggio in the background, going up and down. This is interesting. You might notice you can't move. I can't go down here because the two characters together are too wide to fit through that particular passageway. It's that one too. And that one kind of stuck here, it seems. Can't go down that way, but we can go this way. Her hair is lighter, and his is gone. He's balding. Stuck again. Okay, there we go. Oh, there's another box. Yay. But I can't seem to open the box. Or maybe I've already opened it. No, I can't seem to. Yeah, interesting. So I think the pixel sprite on the left here, he probably could go down without the other sprite attached to it, but I can't seem to walk across it. Interesting. Or open it. Oh, and she has turned into a tombstone, but he can still move up and down, although quite a bit slower. Oh, there's another box. Hey. are. And I don't know if you noticed, but the number at the top right advances 1 at a time. It was moving 2 at a time when we were together, but now it's moving 1 at a time. There we go, and that's the end. So he's turned into a tombstone. You can see it's because he's all the way over there, at the far end of the screen. That's when he turns into the tombstone, and the game scrolls. This thing slides over, and it's game over. And of course, you could try again. And it doesn't really say game over. Notice it doesn't say start playing or anything. It doesn't actually use the verb play or game, or the word game in the context of it. It simply says the word passage, and then all it gives us to interpret is the imagery that we see there, and then the sound and the movement. And the impact of our decisions and our behavior are also become available. So yeah, now let me see if I can go. So interesting. So I'm looking at a couple of questions now in Discord. So let me answer the questions and see if these are, I don't know if these are meant to be rhetorical questions or literal questions. But as Ben notices, you don't actually have to run into the female sprite or the spouse sprite. Ben has interpreted that moment as marriage, and many people do. I think that's reasonable, but it doesn't literally say marriage. It just has the heart symbol pop out. But yeah, you don't have to. That's an option you can choose. It is harder to progress, as Scott points out, because the space that you occupy as you move is the width of both of the sprites together. So you have to actually find passageways that they can move through. Ben noticed also the number does go up as you move. So if you stay still, the number doesn't go up, but you still advance left to right visually in terms of the field of view, but you don't actually move through the world of the game unless you actually use the arrow keys. It's using the arrow keys that actually makes your number go up. If you want to interpret that as the score, that's an idea. And as Beck raises the question, what happens if you don't move at all? Well, we could try. I can actually just, let me restart that real quick. Yeah, so you can just remain motionless, and interestingly, you can just sort of barely see her off to the right there, in the middle. But let's see if I can't get the mouse to show up over that, but she's over there, but the masculine sprite, the main character sprite appears right here. As you can see, I'm not controlling it right now, but his point of view within the frame of the screen is moving over that way, but he's staying in the same place in terms of the game world. Like he's staying on the edge of that cliff there. So yeah, a lot of interesting things here. So, and Lachi's noting the way that pixelization works. And if you notice, like the part that I'm looking at right here, the part that's near the character is fairly clear right now. It's the part that's way over there in the other side, maybe you could say in the far future, that's kind of blurry. And as we watch, I think we'll see that the blurriness is more on the background over there on the left. Yeah. The partner does die first. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me ask the question. I think we've hit the main things. A couple others, but as far as the details, what I like about this game is its simplicity. It's a very elegantly simple game, and so if we're looking for mechanics, we have very few to really notice, and noticing those turn out almost all to be significant. So let's see if we can put this in the context of gender. That was the subject for today. How does gender work here at a representational level? So I'll type that in the chat too. So in terms of representation, what aspects of the game relate to gender? Kind of an awkward way to phrase the question, but hopefully you can see what I'm getting at. In other words, which character? Okay, well, it looks like you're typing, so I'll let you go with it. But another way of putting this is like, which character? Okay, so I was going to say, the character you play as appears masculine in various ways. It presents as masculine, and so visually we can see that by looking at the length of the hair, and apparently wearing a shirt and pants. Yeah, I mean, we've been saying it that way, and I think that's a conventional identity here, but it certainly, I think, presents as masculine, and that's reasonable. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. So then the so Colin's comment here that says you always start as a guy and you have to. Oh yeah, the balding also is certainly a masculine presentation. As Beck points out, Colin's pointing out that the masculine character, the character you play as, initiates the relationship. So if you notice, well, if I can get my screen back, I can move. Well, can I? There we go. There we go. I can move, and it's my choice as this character whether or not to, effectively crash into this female character and initiate the marriage or not. I can do either one. This might be kind of interesting. Let's see what happens here. If I have not initiated the marriage, but we seem to know each other, I wonder if I can get close enough to her that you can see what. Oh man, okay, I guess not. I wanted to see if we could find out. Oh, that's interesting. It doesn't actually move us together, so I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to see what happens because I'm pretty sure because she will actually turn into a tombstone, whether or not you're married to her, like whether or not you're there. You may not be able to see her, but if you were able to, the game code, you can look at it in the game code. She actually transforms into a tombstone at a specific moment, whether or not you've initiated that relationship. If you look at the source code. So here we've sort of just gotten married, and he still becomes stooped over and kind of sad, and kind of goes from there. All right. So in terms of gender and thinking of it in a representational context, we've got the masculine character the player character appears masculine and also appears to perform masculinity according to gender norms that we expect from culture, which is that he initiates a relationship with a female, and the fact that they're married or not does impact both of their lives, but he's the only one capable of making that choice here. He's the one who marries her, and then it goes from there. Now, this is a game meant to be about the passage of life, and so there are different ways we can then critique this as a software object that help us understand its representational strategies and its operational strategies in terms of making an argument. I think there are actually probably two different ways to read this, and I think that you can start to understand those options a little bit more if you play with it a little bit. So let me show you what I'm going to do here, and I'm actually going to switch over to my full screen view so I can show you what I'm going to do with the game code. Hopefully I can show you this. So let's see, don't need that anymore. No, go away. This is the folder. I'm sorry for all the tunnel vision here. Let me just kind of make this bigger so it's showing up here. This is just make sure that you see what I hope you to see. Okay, so this is the folder that contains the game objects and the source code. So you can actually compile the game and run it that way. I was not able to get this working on my Mac, by the way. It might work for Windows, but I'm using Linux here and the Wine Windows interpreter, and it seems to work fine on this computer. But that's just to say your mileage may vary if you try to play this on your own. But what you can do with it once you get it running is you can look at how it's put together. So here's the executable file that runs it. It's got a couple of other kind of settings. This is the music. This is kind of tangential, but what's strange is Jason Rohrer, who programmed this game, actually has come up with an engine for composing music graphically. So this is actually the music of the game. It's an image file. It's a bitmap image that performs that sound that you hear as the music. It's interpreted by part of his code to produce the audio. So pretty interesting, but not the main point I wanted to make. The point I wanted to make is that these are the actual files that create all of the imagery in the game, and these are TGA files, which is a bitmap file format. And you may or may not have an editor on your computer that can edit these kinds of images. I do, but I'll show you. You can still learn a lot about them just by viewing them. So this is the file called charactersprite.tga. And this particular viewer is interpolating it, so it's kind of looking fuzzy, but you can still kind of see how it looks, hopefully. The one on the left, these are the different views of the character that you control, and so we can see him facing different directions as you turn the key, use the arrow keys to move in different directions at different ages. He has 4 different ages, and at specific moments in the game progress, the character sprite switches to the next column and then is moving as that sprite, and then do the next column, and then the last with different looks for each of those different angles. But this is it's called charactersprite.tga. The other is called spousesprite.tga. She actually only has 3 different states that she can be in, and she moves left to right, all the different directions. We can see all the different ways she's facing by looking at these columns vertically, and we can understand her that way. Okay, so one thing that you might be able to find, and I should have probably tested this part before I streamed it, but this is how it normally works. The game code is actually just loading these files, and it's looking for these files by file name. In other words, the exe file, the executable here does not actually contain the game data like this. It actually just looks for the game data in the same directory. At least that's how it usually works on Windows. I haven't tried it on Linux, but let's see if this works. So let me just do a little fanciness here. Okay, so that's going to be a backup of my character sprite. You see how I just did Control-C, Control-V. So now I've got a copy of the original files, character sprite.tga, spouse sprite.tga, both of those are copies. So what happens if we do a little file manipulation here? So let's see. Actually, I have to be careful not to rename things twice. So let me just make that one temporarily with that extra name, but let me change character sprite to spouse sprite. And then let me change this one to character sprite. And let's see if this actually does what it's supposed to. It should, but let's see. What do you think is going to happen? Oh, it did. It worked. Good. Okay. I wasn't sure if that would work. So check it out to see what's different. So I just swapped the file names around, and now I'm controlling the feminine sprite, and I have the choice of approaching and marrying the masculine sprite or not. I can also move around like this the same way as before. Everything else in the game is identical. All that's changed is which character I'm controlling. All right, so let's see if I can go ahead and get married. Yeah. So now we're married, and now we walk together. In the original version of the game, the feminine sprite led, and went first, at least, was on the right, and the masculine sprite was on the left, and now those are swapped, so they are up and down. I mean, they still move up and down the same way, left and right the same way, but now they're swapped left and right, so they work differently. So, kind of interesting, right? So let me show you one more. The woman, so in the normal way the play, somebody just mentioned this, or I just saw it anyway, the file known as spouse sprite always stops moving first. So the game behavior is still the same, it's just that, actually I'm not sure what happens because the spouse sprite image file is not wide enough to have that fourth stage, so I don't know what's going to happen if we let that play, but I'm going to show you a couple more transformations that you can make just to kind of further illustrate the point. All right, so let's do a couple more. So we've got, let's see, so that's spouse sprite. Let's see, we could also make this here, let's do this. Let's just kind of keep messing with it. Oh, right. Okay, and so I bet you can guess what's going to happen now. Oh wait, it didn't work. What did I do wrong? That was still the same. Hang on. Spouse sprite, character sprite. Those look the same to me. I mean, those look correct to me. Let's see. Character sprite, TGA, spouse sprite. Oh, no, I didn't do it right. It's just the preview didn't update is what happens. So I just renamed the wrong one. Okay, I think that should work this time. Yeah, there we go. So now I control feminine sprite as before, but the other sprite that I can choose to get married with or not is also a feminine sprite. Looks identical, so we could go like that, and now we're a happy couple. So the question is, there are several questions. One of them is this game, because now I've created it, I've rearranged it a bit, is the game I've made now it's still the same game, or have I made my own game? If it is still the same game, and I would argue it is, because most of the things that make it Passage, like the music, like the mechanics, like the imagery, all of those things are still the same. Have I made this now a game about a lesbian relationship, or is it still a game about a heteronormative masculine, feminine, male-female marriage? I am interested in what you think, but if that's if that just needs to be a rhetorical question, that's okay too, because it's kind of hard for me to see what you all are saying. But what do you think? Let me see. I see some people typing. And what it looks like a couple people are typing, but Kate always had an interesting point there, that achieving your goals, hunting for treasure, etc., will be harder with a woman traveling with you, as she says. Yeah, and I mean, that's one way to interpret it. I think another way to interpret is that, first of all, we don't necessarily know that getting treasure is the goal. Like, we don't have to get the treasure. The game progresses the same either way. Both characters die either way. The number goes up differently, but there's no message to say congratulations, you got a high score, or better luck next time, or anything like that. If we choose to seek treasure, we are constrained, though. So you're right that we can choose different. If we are interpreting the treasure as accomplishments in life, let's say, then you might say that being in a relationship means that you have to change your goals. That certain things that you had in mind as an individual perhaps are no longer available to you. So, I mean, this is something that I can relate to. I am married, and when my wife and I got married, we both had to kind of talk about our plans for life, and those plans I think are necessarily different because we're a couple than they would be if we were single. It's something that also when we chose to have children, like that's another thing that has changed our opportunities in our lives. It changed our kind of house we chose to live in, and how much disposable income we have. I mean, all kinds of things have changed because we had children, and these are good things. I mean, these are things that are different, but I mean, I'm happy with the life that I have. All right, so I think I see a bit of a discussion there. Certainly, I've changed the representational gender. I've changed the gender presentation of the character that I'm playing as. I think that the game actually. I think Jason Rohrer, the game's designer, I don't think he's come out and said it, but it does seem like he's left open the possibility for interpreting the gender of these characters ambiguously, because in the file structure, he consistently refers to them as character and spouse, and not as husband and wife or male and female or anything like that. But character and spouse being gender neutral terms, I think opens up this kind of reading that I'm able to do here that is even more exposed when I swap the genders around. So if we are focused instead on the mechanics of the game, the operations of the game, gender here may not really matter that much. What matters is other things like love and life and choices and decisions, and how we choose to live our life, and whether or not we choose to live it with somebody or by ourselves. I mean, these are the kinds of things that gender doesn't necessarily matter. Oh, that's interesting. Character, it actually found. The game code found the fourth stage of a masculine sprite for the final scene here, as we watch it play out to the end. So the actual mechanics and I would argue that the mechanics of this game are almost, or if not more than, more expressive than the representational level. if that's what we're interested in, then gender doesn't seem to be a big factor in determining the interpretation of this as a game about life. And Jason Rohrer, the creator, has described this as a memento mori. It's a game that's meant to encourage you to reflect on your own life. And you heard me do that a moment ago. You can't avoid reflecting on your own life and thinking about your own choices and your eventual death. I mean, this is a sad game because it kind of puts us into that mood and that kind of mentality. And that's, I think, what some of you were responding to in your team chat. So yeah, it's an interesting game, and I think it raises questions about gender and in ways that we can reflect on if we start pulling it apart as a software object. So let's see if I can take a look at, and I haven't actually done this yet, so I want to see if I can take a look at Queers in Love. Let me put this back on this kind of screen. So this is Queers in Love at the End of the Universe. Let me just play through it a few times. In terms of gender at the representation level, we have pronouns. So we have kiss her, hold her, take her, tell her, right? So, and then you can just kind of blast through it. It's more just a question of like how fast can you get through it. And it's, you know, the only way to play it is to speed run it. You really can't read it as you're trying to play it if you want to try to get through to the end. Now let's see, I have not actually tried this, but often you can peek under the hood of a Twitch game, or Twine game rather. This is a game made with Twine. Let's see if I can I've not actually looked at how these are hosted on itch, so give me a minute here. I need to see if this is linked in or if this is, okay, can't see it. So I'm going to go into debugger mode here a little bit and see if I can't locate the game file. It could also just be, if it's embedded with an iframe, I'm going to have a harder time. Let's just see. Oh yeah, it is. Cool. Oh, they've got hotlink. So okay, interesting. So they don't let me access the game directly, and it's probably a workaround. But I was trying to access the source, like the actual Twine HTML file. If you can access the Twine's HTML file, then you can do some things with it to try to interpret it. I do wonder if. No, she hasn't made it downloadable. Okay, interesting. Well, I can debug and try to play with this a little bit more, but basically the idea is if you are, like some of you posed the question in chat about like trying to see the whole story, like you want to try to see everything and you can't unless you're super fast and you can read super fast. It just takes a while, right? A lot of iteration where you're not really able to take things in. You just have to kind of blast through it as much as you can. But if you are able to download the game, upload this into the Twine Editor, you could actually look at the structure and see the options and read all the text. It just takes a little bit of work to do that. And I can't, the platform here, itch.io, has kind of blocked the normal way that I would do that. So I might have to try to do a little bit more debugging. Anyway, the point again was to think about how gender works at a representational level and as an operational level here. And also just the theme of it, the apocalypse, the end of the world. Seemed, I don't know, seemed resonant right now, and so I just thought this would be an interesting thing to look at together. I never got that ending before. It's also a game that uses second person, and so when it says you have 10 seconds, but there's so much you want to do, it kind of puts you into this relationship. It has a feminine pronoun set, and so that's something that we might all experience a little differently given our individual personal pronouns that we prefer. But by using the second person, it at least invites you into that perspective, which is something that video games can do very well. Okay, well, unfortunately, I'm not able to really break that down as much as I'd like to, unless you all don't mind me playing around with it for a minute. I wonder if I can just do that. No, almost. So it's like it's redirecting me to this hot link here. Interesting. Okay, so let me just see something here. What if I do this? There it is. Okay, so that's the game code right there. This down here is the content of the game, basically. So, okay. All right, give me a minute. Let me see. I might be able to do something with this. Okay. Yeah. See, so this is the actual content of the game. It's actually pretty elaborate, even though it's a very short game. But I believe I can just save this. Let me just try it. I'm going to save this and then Twine. I know some of you know Twine. If you go to twinery.org, you can use the Twine Editor. That's the software used to make games like Queers in Love. Usually, Queers in Love at the End of the Universe it's an unusually fast game. Most Twine games are very slow, and they're more about reading and contemplating and understanding. But this one, how is it going to work? Oh, it's not working. Oh, okay. Well, or maybe it's... No, it's not working. Let me just try one more time. I don't think it's actually interpreting it. This move that I'm doing right here does not always work depending on... it's got the version of the story that I'm trying to import here is the published version and not the archived version. And oftentimes those are similar enough that the Twine thing will figure it out anyway and let you see the story loaded into the editor, but it's not working. So I need to maybe make some changes here. I mean, that's Twine JavaScript, I think. This is... These things are not... I don't think these are going to matter, but I'm going to go ahead and delete these. I'm going to try one more time, and then if it doesn't work, I'm just going to wrap things up. Nope. Okay. If it worked, it would pop up right here, and it's not. So okay. Yeah. Sorry, the bird cam didn't work out. Obviously, I need to keep trying some things, but there haven't been any birds. You haven't missed anything. So because there's kids running around yelling, so they've scared all the birds off for now. But I'm going to keep trying that, and hopefully by tomorrow I can figure out a smoother way to have the audio working both at the same time. Sort of a unusual tech problem, like it always. Yeah, it's always something, right? Okay, so the other bit I wanted you to look at over the lunch break was an article in the journal Game Studies, and so this is an article I hope you've read or had a chance to look at. If not, please do look at it because I want to pose a question for your journal, for your gaming journal that may have something to do with this. There's a pretty interesting set of ideas here, and I wanted to extrapolate a couple of them just to help you get the context of this article, and then help you enjoy reading it, I think, because it's really interesting. So it's talking about Roberta Williams, and let me find, this is the view with the actual pictures in it. And the work that Roberta Williams is most well known for is a game called Mystery House, and you can see an image of it here. It's from 1980, and the graphics don't look like much by our standards, but it was pretty much, it was pretty compelling at the time. I think it was pretty like, oh cool, you can do this with computers, because people up until then had only had graphics on like game consoles, and so to do it on a personal computer was kind of a big deal, but also to tell a story was kind of a cool thing, and to do this both at the same time, right? So there's a lot going on here that was pretty interesting, and of course it went on, it was pretty successful. So Roberta Williams with Sierra Online was able to produce quite a few other games over the years, so like the King's Quest series. So, Mystery House kind of, if nothing else, got Roberta Williams' career started, and she was able to go on and make other games that were, maybe look, more compelling graphically, I suppose. But so pretty interesting work to read about. But a couple of phrases here I thought were really interesting, and I wanted to talk about them a little bit. So Lane Nooney is the author, and what they're doing here is talking about talking about game history and ways that we try to tell game history differently. And if you remember, I was trying to do some of this when I talked about video game generations and the patrilineal idea of how those tend to progress. The same is true when we talk about influential game designers. We tend to think about kind of big gods of games, as the article down here talked about. So there's kind of these dudes are who we tend to think about when we think about game designers through the 80s and 90s. It's like these dudes and then Roberta Williams. And so there she is right here on the couch. And part of what this article is trying to do is not just sort of like, let's add more women, or let's go back in time and figure out where the women were if they weren't here making games, or find women who were making games but weren't getting featured in magazine spreads like this. That's one way to do something like game history. That is significant. But what she's trying to do here instead is understand, she uses the word infrastructure in this article, and I wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit. The word gendered infrastructure is, I think, really revealing here. Sorry, a bird just showed up, but it's not at the feeder yet. And I unplugged it, so I can't actually pull the camera up anyway, so you'll have to just believe me, it's a sparrow. I think it's a sparrow, I don't know. It's not on the feeder anyway. But okay, so this idea of infrastructure, right? So this is, there was that phrase, okay, there was this. Yeah, so it's the idea of understanding game history, but also any history through the lens of who has access to what at a specific moment in time and space. And if we look at that with attention to gender, that's going to be very different depending on which gender someone identifies as in these time periods in question, 1970s, 1980s. And so this is so for this section of the article, Lane Nooney, the author of this article, is writing about the kitchen table. It's like, so the idea that Roberta Williams writes this on the kitchen table while her son is asleep, that gives us a sense of the game, and it gives us a sense of her, but also those are senses that are structured by the fact that she's a young mother at this point. So her being a woman and being a mother inform the availability of that kitchen table to let her create that. And then as she creates the imagery for Mystery House, she's doing it in that context, looking around her house and creating it in a way that looks like, creating the game in a way that looks like her house, maybe. Or at least that's the domestic space of the Mystery House is kind of like the domestic space that she lives in. And a couple of you are playing games that are related to houses, Gone Home, and I don't know if anyone's doing Edith Finch, but these are games built around domestic spaces. And so it'd be interesting, especially if you are playing one of those games this week, to look at how domestic space is described here in this article, because this is the gendered infrastructure. Like, the idea of a home is a space that has quite a lot of gendered structure to it, right? So there's the kitchen is the domain of the woman of the house, the den or the garage are the domain of the man of the house. These are ways that we conventionally think about space as being organized around gender roles within a family. And Roberta Williams' understanding of that and participation in that structure is what this article is trying to focus on. So make sure you take a look at it. I think it's pretty interesting and well written, and interesting in terms of historicizing video games, but especially focusing on the question of gender in a slightly different way. So it's not just sort of like, let's cast a wider net to find more women, but let's try to understand the structured way that women were there and how their gender affected their ability to be there or not, or the way that they were there or not. So interesting article, please read it, and I'll pose a couple questions in a prompt for the Gaming Journal today that will give you an opportunity to share some ideas on that if you'd like. But mainly it's going to be, I'm going to be asking you about your game and how things are going so far. And yeah, that's it. Yeah, so that's going to be here. I'm going to be adding that to the Gaming Journal #1 discussion page momentarily after I wrap up the stream, and then adding in the notes and things for today here in Canvas on the module page. Okay, so let's see. Anyone? Oh, hi Kelly, welcome back. Hope it went well. Yeah, I'm just wrapping up. So this is you can watch back in reverse. Although, spoiler alert, the first 20 minutes or so, my microphone was muted. But yeah, I'll see if I can get the webcam, the bird cam flipped back on. I might just set that on and stream later on. Okay, cool. Well, I hope you're doing well. Enjoy playing your game. And if you still have not chosen a game to play this week, you need to do that as soon as possible. So make that choice and get that set up. If you have any questions about which game, or if you have any issues or problems setting it up or figuring out how to install it on your computer or whatever else you need to do to get it playing, please let me know. I'd be happy to try and help and troubleshoot things. These are things that I might be able to figure out, might not be, but I'll certainly try. All right, cool. So I'll be back again tomorrow at 10 a.m. With some different things to talk about, and should be interesting. All right. Have a good afternoon. I'll see you later. Bye. Oh, let me see. Where am I going to go? No. Okay, bye.